right, we're going to start off with the basic essentials for coding the web. And this is our book for Jackson High School that I've created. And the beginning of this is going to be lesson 1, which is actually on page 3. And at the bottom of page 3, we talk about sort of the basic page setup. So you can use any text editor like Notepad or really anything to type in codes. But on your computers, you're going to find Notepad++. It looks like this when you open it up. When you're using this, which we'll use every now and then, you'll have to set your language to HTML so it knows you're creating a web page and not something else, because there's a lot of other languages in there too. So the first line, whenever you're creating your code, is the document type. Now, this is going to be achieved by putting this in brackets, because all of the tags are located in brackets. Doc type starts with an exclamation mark, and then you put space HTML. And what that does is it tells the browser, remember the browser is like Google Chrome, Internet Explorer, it tells the browser that this is in HTML5. That's the document type line for an HTML5 document, and that's the version of HTML we will use in here. After that, the next tag is going to be the HTML tag, which again just defines the boundaries of the page. It's just something that has to be there. And when you open a tag, you have to close the tag. So that slash down here represents that a tag has been closed. HTML holds everything on the page. So this beginning one's going to be that second line, because this one is just a declaration, so it doesn't get a tag pair. There's not a closing one. So this holds everything. Now in our example in class, we're creating our little HTML man. So he has a little HTML hat, and he has a little HTML foot down there at the bottom, and that's what these represent. Then he has two parts to his little body, and I tell you to think of him as a two-ball snowman. So his top part is his head, and the other part is his body. Oops, look, I typed it in wrong, and it still decided to make the other side. There we go. And so basically, there are certain things that go in the head part of your little HTML man, and certain things that go in the body part. Now, the spacing on all these doesn't really matter. I could put multiple things on one line even. But I'm trying to make this just so it's a little easier to see, so you can see it spaced out. So we have our head and we have our body. So for the head, only one critical thing has to go in here when we first start, and that is the title. So it's going to go inside, there I go again, spelling things wrong. That's going to go inside matching tags, and then in between you're going to type in the raw text. So those are the non-codes. So those are things that you actually are going to have on the page, or in this case, in the title tab. Anything that's on the head section of this web page code does not show on the actual web page itself. And I'll show you an example. I'm going to put look up here on this, and I'm going to save this document. It's going to save it as an HTML file. I've already given it a name, so it has a name. And then in this program, you can click Run and then Launch in, and you can choose a browser. So if I click Launch in Chrome, it opens. And notice my web page has nothing on it. And that's because the code that I used was in the head section. But if you look up here where it says look up here, see how crazy that is, you see those words because that's the title. So the title of the page is not something that shows up at the top of the page. It's something that shows up in the little title tab way up here. And you can't do anything fancy up there, like you can't bold or italics or anything like that up in this title tab. It's just very basic raw text. And then there's a couple of other things that we'll also be adding up in here. I'm not going to add the details in this first video, but there will be a set of meta tags that you'll also use, which we will get into later on. So I'm just going to leave a spot for them. Well, actually, there'll probably be 2 of them. But anyway, so just know that those are going to go up there. And eventually, a link tag will go up there when we link this HTML file to a style sheet that makes it pretty. All right, so in the body section is where you put the actual content of the web page, what you see on the browser. So you can have headings and paragraphs, and up to this point, that's all you're going to learn for the moment. Headings have 6 levels. The biggest is a heading 1, and headings are automatically bold and automatically have space around them. So I'm just going to put I'm a heading up here, and then below this heading, I'm going to create a paragraph of text. And so I'm going to type P tags, which represent paragraph, and I'm going to put I'm a paragraph. Okay. Now, if I save this and take a look at it in my browser, which is already open, so I just have to refresh after I save. There we go. So here's my heading. Notice there's a gap because headings automatically have space around them, and paragraphs do too. And so even though this is just a couple words, it's still considered a paragraph. You should never have any words that are just hanging out here. Hanging out here. Hanging. It's cool. So like if we put all these out here, they're all just going to run into each other because technically they're not in anything. See? So even the fact that they're on different lines doesn't matter. You have to code it so it knows what it is. And in this case, these would technically be paragraphs. So I would have to put paragraph tags around them. Now, if you're in a program that self-closes, you're going to have to cut and paste your closing tag. Control X, like if you have scissors open, cuts it. And Control V, like the insert proofreader mark, paste it. I'm kind of one of those that likes to copy and paste a lot. So like here, I would just copy and paste this a couple times. And I put it at the end and then just throw my closing in there. It's a little faster. All right, so there we go. I've got that there. If I go and give it a refresh, there we go. Now we've got separate paragraphs. And notice they all have a little gap in between them. So that's how that works. So let's say we want to add a different heading. There are various levels, like I said before. So if I do an H2, that's a different level heading, which is smaller than an H1. And if I refresh, you can see here what that looks like. And a heading 3 is a little bit smaller, and so on and so forth. A heading 4 is about the same size as a paragraph. It's just bold. That's the difference. And then when you get to heading 5s and heading 6s, they're actually smaller than the base font size of your document. So there you go. So that's your general gist of how this starts off. So we have that doc type. We have our HTML pair that holds everything. We have the head that holds the title and eventually meta tags and a link tag. And then we have the body, and the body is the big part that holds everything else. Headings, eventually when we start adding pictures, all that stuff goes in the body section. Now in Dreamweaver, which we'll not use until December, but we use in Web Design 2, it'll automatically have this meta tag. This is the character set meta tag, which is UTF-8. That sets the character set for the language. Don't really worry about what that means, just know that's what it does. In Thimble, which we're going to be using for a lot of our projects in here, Thimble's base HTML structure has the character set, but it also has these two lines. The viewport, which sets the initial scale of the page to 1. This viewport will help with what's called responsive design, which we'll get into much later. And then the link, and this would link us to the style page. It's called the style sheet, which has all the pretty stuff in it, like the colors for your web page and stuff like that. So those things would go in the head because there's nothing to show on the page with that. The things in the body are going to be headings, paragraphs, images, all of that different stuff. So details about all of this is on page 4 in here, and that pretty much gets you through the basics of the first lesson. Now in the class we're going to be using Thimble. So if you did not already, you would download the starting Thimble document, and that starting document is up underneath yesterday, which is Wednesday. Unless, of course, you're watching this on a different year. So practice 1A, it's going to have you remix it, which means you're going to make your own version in your Thimble account. So be sure you're logged in. It's going to give you a version of that document that I've delivered to you. And notice everything is run together here. So your task is to go in here and add in all of the code. So I'll help you get started. So that first line is going to be your document type. And of course, you want to start memorizing these so you don't have to look them up constantly. Then you're going to put in your HTML because that holds everything on the page, and then take this one, Control X to cut, put it at the very bottom, Control V to paste. So we've got that part. This is going to be your title that's going to go up in your little tab up here. Now in Thimble, you can't actually see it because Thimble's side by side and automatically updates, so that's kind of cool. But unfortunately, you can't see the title. So I'm going to put my head in here. Right now, the only thing in the head is going to be that title. So I'll put title around these words, and then move this closing to after the words. And then if I had this saved on an actual website, or if I had it in Notepad++, you would see this up in the title tab. But you won't be able to see that in here because you're seeing this page in the title tab. All right, so nothing looks different here yet because we haven't made the big body section have any paragraphs or anything. So we got to get to the body. And your last two tags of every document should be body and HTML being turned off. It's the last two things. That's just the way it goes. Now everything in here needs to have something around it. It has to be contained in something. everything. So we have to put some container tags on everything. So this first one says web design heading. So if it's a heading, we want it to be a big one, we'd go with an H1, a heading level 1. And then we have to turn it off. Now see, if you just have this in here, it makes no difference. You don't see anything changing, right? Because you have to have raw text in between these for something to change. That'd be like me saying, okay, bold the word, now stop bolding the word, but there's no word, right? So we're going to cut this out, put it over here, and now when we get in here, if we hit this refresh button, we have a heading. Okay. Now I have a smaller heading, so say I want to do an H2, you can do an H3 if you're feeling snazzy. And then again, I got to move this because it's got to be after the words that I want to be that size. And there we go. And then finally, to get our paragraphs to look right, we just have to put in those paragraph tags. So there's a P to turn the paragraph on, cut it to where we turn the paragraph off, then come here and repeat this process for this one, and cut it and turn it off at the end. There we go. Now we've got a properly designed, basically structured page. So there you go. This is practice 1A, so please be sure to name it practice 1A so you know what it is for the future, and you should be good to go. Again, refer back to this if you need some help remembering what those space tags are, and good luck.